Thank you everyone for joining dotConnect. Hopefully you're having a great time. You're learning a bit, you're connecting with others. This session is Code to Campaign, optimizing content workflows with tech. I am thrilled to have a friend, former colleague, and one of the smartest folks who has a wide array of experience from creative to demand to everything in between. So I'm gonna let Donnie introduce himself in a minute. I also have a long-standing partner and one of the best architects that I have met in the business, Danny Patterson from Depth. And why don't you guys both go ahead and say hello before we get into the details of the session. So Donnie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, hello everybody. As Ryan mentioned, I'm the VP of Marketing at Total Expert. We are a B2B SaaS company, and I've worked in a couple of B2B SaaS businesses, working through our marketing function, and very excited to be here today.
Thanks, Donnie. And for you, Danny.
Yeah, hello everybody. I am Danny Patterson. I'm a principal architect for Depth Agency and been doing everything CMS and tech for the past 10 to 12 years. And thoroughly enjoying the process and the experience.
Great. Donnie, Danny, thanks for being with us. One of the reasons I was so excited to have these two within this session is because Donnie has a ton of experience around creative, as well as getting campaigns live, optimizing those campaigns. Danny has great experience architecting sort of the infrastructure and the tools that allow the marketers and the business to deliver on those campaigns. But we know that it's a life cycle that the end user often doesn't know about or appreciate. And what they really care about is the content and what they consume through that campaign that brings value to them. So maybe I'll start with you, Donnie, because often I'm sure you're getting asked the question of what is the value of a campaign that we run, or what is the impact of content? And so maybe you can talk through when content and campaigns are done right, what that means to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, whenever someone's asked me that, I like to throw it back to them first of all and say, well, what are you trying to get out of it? I get frustrated at marketing for marketing's sake. I don't think that any company wants to just spend money to spend money. It's really about understanding what are the goals of the business and what are the goals of that team. So when I look at a marketing piece and look at content in particular, it's thinking through the audience and what is the end action that we're asking them to take and making sure that we have ways to track how we're delivering that. And there can be some things that are harder to track. So I'm sure we'll talk today a little bit about some bigger funnel brand awareness pieces. Putting out there, you don't always have the ability to track those as much, but you can look at how they're impacting your brand in the market. And you can also identify, are there pieces that are trying to truly drive an action? If we're trying to get to a certain persona or a certain type of user, how are we going to track what we're asking them to do? So making sure that you have all the right systems in place to not only enable those actions to happen, but track and accurately measure them, that's success to me.
Yeah, Donnie, I love that because you're starting with the customer in mind, right? You're starting, what do they care about and kind of obfuscating all of the process behind the scenes. And that's the place that is interesting to us as a CMS vendor. People say, hey, we need this functionality. And the question we try to turn back is what are you trying to achieve? And who are you trying to achieve those goals with as a result of your content? But Danny, maybe I'll pass it to you. So there's the output, and then there's the process to get to that output in building and deploying campaigns and digital experiences. What are some of the big pitfalls that you often see with the companies that you work with when it comes to creating the right process and the right mechanisms to deliver great campaigns?
So it's along similar lines as Donnie, really, right? So the main thing that I focus on, especially in the beginning, is to ensure that it's not just a tech project. It's not just a business project, right? We have three pillars we refer to. There's business, editorial, and technology. Everyone wants to do their own thing and everyone has an expected outcome. But unless you can bring those three together and start to collaborate and converse about what those expectations are, what the value add is, what the business is looking for, you don't get the success outcomes regardless of how much effort you put in. You've got to have full alignment across those three pillars. Otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah, Danny, something that you said there really resonated with me around alignment. But alignment is not just the folks working on the project, it's the full scope, because there's a lot of people in the content lifecycle and campaigns that need to either be educated, or they need to be supported, or they need to be enabled with the tools to deliver. So how do you think about early in the process, the combination of education versus enablement when you take on, when you're trying to optimize and build campaigns?
So I think it's about setting the groundwork and the boundaries for what each pillar's responsibilities are, right? So, for example, making sure that the business has refined the direction, the vision, the strategy, right? The requirements, even the successful criteria. How do you measure the journey we're about to go on? How do we know that it's successful? Do we have our metrics and our tools and all those things in place? They set the guide rails as to how we do that. We don't try not to allow the business side to get focused on what is feature rich in a piece of technology, right? Don't let them focus on that. And that is such a crucial piece, because the business is providing the guide rails to go back and reevaluate what those previous or what those upcoming requirements and features and all the new things they want. That's how you validate whether they're a valid thing to do, right? Where is the value at, and does it match what your initial strategy is? And of course, strategies change and the vision changes, and you learn more as you go on, especially with technology enforcing that and enabling it. Then in terms of the editorial side, these folks are the day-to-day, right? So if those people aren't successful, then the business can't move forward. And the tech teams are dragged down by day-to-day tactical tasks, and the editors aren't happy. You need to make these model changes or these, whatever it might be. And then on the tech side, it is focusing on what you said before, which is enablement. It's not about, I want to use this tech stack, or I think this is cool, or the internet tells me this is the way you should build web applications. It's about, there's the vision, there's the people that are going to use it. How do you enable them? Not just to say, okay, they've now got a CMS implementation and they can use it. You've got to be able to free yourself up to innovate for the future, whether that's a new piece of technology or a new strategy element or whatever it might be. So the job for the tech folks is to provide that enablement and that support. It's not to say, this is the way we implement a web service or a web app or a website or a CMS. So if you can get people to think in those terms, which is generally what I try to do, is just get that alignment, understand responsibilities, keep people in those pockets. And then as they branch out and conversations converge, you find that the teams and the pillars start to talk more. If you can bring that alignment in, that is longevity in the process. And that is how you create continued success, not just for this implementation or whatever it might be.
Yeah, Danny, I mean, I think what I was hearing in some of that was this coming to the middle of an understanding, right? Like whether the content author having the tools that they need to do, and the builders having the tools, not just based on the feature set, but what is important for the outcome of the campaign. So as you think, I think you touched on a lot of them, but maybe Donnie or Danny, one of you guys can be a little bit more explicit. The people who are involved from code to campaign. We talked about developers. We talked about the folks who would need to manage the application, could be developers or DevOps teams. You have the marketing folks who are building the overarching strategy, the content editors, and then maybe the demand team who's actually optimizing. But any gaps that I missed in kind of the personas who are playing a role from code to campaign, and that you want to call out that I missed? The creative side. Sorry.
Yeah. So obviously, typically there'd be a couple of creative roles that are in there depending on the type of campaign or content you're creating. The thing that I would stress is, and it sort of builds on what Danny just said. If you think about them as individuals that are groups that you're working through from start to finish, it is not a point A to point B. Like step 1 goes to step 2, step 2 to step 3. If that is the way you're operating, you have failed. Because if you do not start where you're trying to go and who is building it at the end, they have to be involved from the beginning. So, for example, if you're trying to create a web experience, the person who's responsible for at the end building and implementing that web experience needs to be there and understand what the creative vision, what the mission and vision of this is up front. If they're not involved along the way, it's like the worst game of telephone. Like you're a kid on the playground and it's kid A to kid Z. You have two different messages. That's what's going to happen as it goes through your team. And you're going to have a project that started off with a beautiful vision, but a little bit changes along the way and no one is on the same page when you get to the end. That's failure to me. You have to identify who are those key individuals that need to be involved the entire way. And you really look at the sort of a leader. So Danny gave off some of the groups of people. You have your coders and the people who are building it at the very end. You have your demand team. Each little group of people needs to have at least one person who is really a part of that project and a key stakeholder the entire time. They might then go back to those groups and execute within their group because they're controlling that small vision for how demand is focusing on it. But they have to be a part of it from the very beginning to the very end.
Yeah, Donnie, I love that because, in many cases, we know that minor tweaks to copy or creative or where experience is delivered can have huge impacts on revenue or customer engagement. And so as channels are emerging and as you have the ability to create more content and have more content authors, that nimble mindset while having the right kind of tools to enable all personas is something that we are particularly passionate about at .cms. But I think you kind of are leading me into another area, which is as you think about tools to enable this code to creation process, code to campaign process, what is the lens? What are kind of the staples of how you evaluate the technology and the members of your team who are going to be part of that? Like, is it about flexibility? Is it about, what are the other things that come to mind in terms of how you think about the process with people at that?
So, just from the tech side, I think it's back to reinforcing, go back to basics. So what was the value proposition? What was the strategy? What was the vision? Go back and make sure any steps that you're trying to take are validated against that. And ultimately, any goal of any CMS implementation is going to be, there is value in the content. How do we get it out quickly? How do we get it out, with the efficiencies in mind, without error? How does it remain compliant? How does it remain accessible? And there's all those stop gaps along the way, right? We all know and are familiar with how those processes work. So it's really just about ensuring that every step that you take is validated at some point in time with that vision. If you don't do that, you're missing, as Donnie said, you're missing a trick, right? You have failed because you've got complacent, I suppose, right? It's very easy to say we finished project A, the website's alive, we've got all this stuff, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be questioning, okay, with this next set of requirements, does what we have today still meet that? Does it still provide us that? Were there any gaps that we had to put to one side because of timeframes or budgets or whatever the case may be? And is now a time to reevaluate those things? Just taking that business perspective, because at the end of the day, the business pays the bills, right? IT is always a cost center. It's not, it's not going to generate revenue. But if you do your job right and you're collaborating, you will be part of the enablement that allows the business to continue to grow. And that's the lens that I will always try to make sure, not just I flip and go back to the teams I'm working with. Don't forget how you achieve success. Always remember how you measured it, how you did it. Let's go back to that. What did you miss? And reset if you have to. That's kind of how I approach the people, the teams, and the people I might be mentoring or delivering with.
Yeah, Danny, I love that the idea that it's never done is something that comes up. So constant iteration and constant empowerment, as well as directing back to what that end goal is. Why do we need to build something for this new channel if we haven't fully optimized where our audience is? Or why are we, changing on Donnie's side? Why are we changing the copy if the goal was to build consistent brand awareness? There's that kind of that North Star I love around consistency, as well as understanding where you're trying to go. Donnie, anything you'd add to that in terms of the lens that you take when evaluating the tech and the process?
Yeah. Just one thing on tech that I would note, and it's one of the things that I hope every MarTech person out there gets right away. But there's a lot of tools you can use. And when you start building different experiences and putting things together, you could have this Frankenstein ball of all this technology. It is critical that you think through how all the things you're using work together and how it ties back to whatever your system of record or your system of intelligence in the business is. Nothing is worse than saying we use this as our CRM, but our MarTech over here only connects to 10% of it. It's like, well, then your MarTech is completely not functional. Like that doesn't work. So anytime you're thinking through your experiences, like there are a lot of things that are out there that are new and flashy that provide opportunity that could be like the new thing to do. I'm not saying don't do them. I'm saying carefully evaluate how it works that you currently have, because if you have disparate, disconnected systems, they're not working very intelligently for you.
Yeah. And I think that
businesses should be prepared for that, right, Donnie, as well. They should be prepared for change during their plan. It's not something you can just say, this is our tech stack, we're sticking with it. Like you said.
Yes. It's as it goes. How are we evaluating as that works? So like if you have like at Total Expert, we have what is our main system, and we've worked to align our MarTech to it. As new things come online and we're like, that's a North Star for us. We want to be able to do that. If I can't do it right now, what's the path to get there? And it might be an iterative step where, okay, I need to figure out how to connect these things together or how to move our tech stack in that direction. But if you just throw everything out on the checkerboard, that's a terrible game to play.
Yeah. No, I agree, Donnie. And one of the things that we continue to hear in the market is this importance of workflows as more people are getting involved in, especially the content creation process with AI. You know, historically, from code to campaign on the marketing and creative side, what encompassed smaller set of folks on the marketing side. But as more of the buyer journey is taking place online, buyers want to go into greater depth in their research. Subject matter experts and different folks outside the core marketing team tend to be involved in the content creation process, which creates sort of these robust workflows. And so that, for me, I look at that, and when I hear clients talk about it, they feel overwhelmed at how they're going to manage that. But I wanted to ask both of you, where do you think in the code to campaign process we're going to see some of the greatest gains in efficiency when we introduce different types of different AI models and different places that AI can be utilized? Where do you think we're going to get the greatest gains? Maybe let's go within this short.
So I'll jump in to sort of give, like, it's funny, like, and I think Danny will probably double down on some of this. That concept of AI may be a little scary to some people, exciting for some, and worrisome for others, because you're starting to think about, it's great because it can spit out tons of stuff, but what's the quality? Is there quality control on this? Is there compliance control on this? Is it really aligned to it? At what point can you generate so much content that it's not feasible that you can tie your brand back to that because it's so much you can't review it? So it's difficult for me, especially, I will also say, coming from a creative background, it's like you get that twinge in the back of your head of, oh, AI is going to replace us. But what I've encouraged my team to do is stop and say, you know what? Let's not think of AI as a replacement. Let's think of it as a way to add velocity to what you're doing. So what are the things that I can put an actual human who you trust, who is an expert in their area, whether it's their channel, their content creation, being a subject matter expert, use them as the expert. How do you use AI processes around them to give them greater velocity in production, whether it is through the early concepts of iterating and generating ideas, whether it's for doing base documentation that they can expand upon. That doesn't mean that I'm going to use AI to generate 15 new web articles. It means that I'm going to use AI to do scanning of the internet, to do market research, to determine where are we with other brands? What are the topics that we're not currently speaking about? Use AI to do the research for you, and then bring that in-house and say, okay, now we have to have a plan of attack. So finding those ways to use different AI tools, again, to do the research, to build your velocity, but not to replace the actual human side of what you're doing.
Yeah. So Donnie, one question I have for you on this, because we're getting, this is more the direct engagement with the consumer. And I love what you said. It's essentially informing your campaign, right? And then you have some of the content that is, let's call it prescriptive, maybe details about your product that is very clear, that you can use to enhance with AI. How do you think about the content that is not conceptual and helping you concept, and the content that is not product or descriptive, but what's in between? How do you think about that as an opportunity and challenge in the life cycle?
I think, again, it's about using AI as a tool to bridge the two, but not removing the human layer. Because when you remove your human layer from it, like, ultimately, to me, like, even a tech brand has to have a human aspect to it. No one wants to just work with a big box. You want to work with maybe a big box that has people that work there. So you need to feel that connection is number one. If you're using a human element, to me, you've lost some of your marketing, regardless of your brand type. The second piece is just understanding that ultimately, I don't want to go back to my boss and say, AI wrote it and I didn't check it. So you need to be able to think through who's setting your strategy. Don't let AI set your strategy. Let AI inform your strategy, but you have to own it. Your channel owners have to be subject matter experts in what they're doing. Trust your channel owners. They will understand how to take those things and put them together without letting AI run it for you.
Yeah, Donnie, I love what you said, that you have to set the strategy, right? AI can inform it and enhance it. And, also there's the protection around how it enhances it, which the workflows, which we talked about a little bit earlier, are going to be so critical. Danny, sorry to leave you waiting there for a few, but where do you think I know you're chomping at the bit. Where do you think we're going to get the biggest gains as a result of AI from code to campaign?
Yeah, I think Donnie nailed pretty much all of it, right? As a business, make sure you've got a strategy in mind. Make sure you don't lose your brand, your tone of voice, right? Your character, everything that makes you you. Don't let AI be a way for you to get complacent and lose that. And I think the biggest gains that you're going to get is in automation, right? And so, for example, having auto tagging and categorization and things like that. People might think, well, okay, but I could get it to generate a bunch of paragraphs for me and things. Yeah, but you've got to understand that human element is key. The validation of that, again, making sure brand consistency is there and all of that. But look at where you've got value add and non-value add tasks within your business.
Yep.
Anything that even if you don't have a strategy, look at the non-value add and say, is there an opportunity for automation and AI to start working together to handle some of this? If you can free people up from the non-value add, then they just become a lot happier. They're not doing mundane things. And again, your content lifecycle is going to run so much smoother with stuff that just doesn't need to be watched over by a person.
I think we're both really passionate about this idea of everybody wants to jump to the sexiest thing, content creation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is a game of velocity and engagement. And this idea of you using AI to solve for some of the age-old challenges that we have in from code to campaign, like taxonomy, like auto tagging of content and making that really smart, of recommended content, of content. Yeah. So like, you want to talk on some of the age-old kind of core CMS things that have been challenging that you think that we can solve kind of in the short term with AI, outside maybe the few that I mentioned, if there's any other?
I think that there's aspects of content authoring and workflow, right? There are so many places where an authoring workflow, especially if you've got third-party people that work on your content management system and distributing content for you, you don't know what they're doing on the other side. They could be using AI to generate some of this stuff. So I think that having AI and automation supported with it to help with those editorial workflows and business workflows, the legal pieces, right? All of that stuff that you may have to go through in terms of compliance, accessibility checks, release cycles and publishing. Those will be the big value add pieces for me that I think are challenging, because it's a shame. And what I see is most people just go to workflow. It's too hard. It slows us down. Turn it off. And they just stop using it. And either switch to a third party tool, or they do it on an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it might be. But if you can put a process around it, if you can build some level of automation around it or some visual tool, that means there's an opportunity to have something like AI and the automation take over that. You don't need to use that as a long-term fix to your challenges. So, and there are many more, like managing media assets, right? Validating that stuff, super crucial for those types of things. And I think in the world we're in right now, businesses probably aren't quite mature enough with their legal and compliance portions, right, to make sure that they're okay with what they're doing and what they're churning out. So, loads of areas around there, but I think just the CMS implementation and concept lifecycle could be improved.
Yeah, Danny, thanks for that. I think it's when you think about multiple sites and at scale, it becomes even more. You can find even more efficiencies if the content workflows are being now utilized and automated across multiple business units. If the images are being again optimized as well through AI across multiple business units and sort of divisions of or segments of a dam, like you can get a tremendous amount of gains by using AI to improve operations around some historical CMS challenges. Danny, I put Donnie on the hot seat a little bit, not as much as I'm going to put you on the hot seat. And I put him on the hot seat asking him about where you use generative AI for content sort of in the middle, not at product content and not at thought leadership content. So my hot seat question for you is, tell us what your thoughts are around using AI for page generation, component generation, sort of on the development side of things, what you think the good and the things that are problematic about it.
Oh, wow. That is a complex question to answer. I would say that I've probably come across more of the issues, in all honesty. So there are lots of gains in terms of efficiencies. I think we've talked quite a lot about those scenarios. I think the challenges are whereby lack of responsibility, especially on the tech side, code generation, right? There are a lot of tools out there now that are coming out, taking imports and integrations from one third-party tool into another. And in practice, they seem very, very good. It would almost make any business turn around and say, that's basically all we need. But in practice, it's taking that human element out of it and thinking that there is a full way to replace what an engineer or someone just monitoring, taking responsibility over code, making sure good practice and automation is applied, gets lost. People get complacent, and like Donnie said before, you can't just hold your hands up and go, well, I didn't write it, right? I told a machine what to do, and it gave me an output. I pasted it, and I brought the website down. It's not my fault. 100% is your fault, right? And at the end of the day, we didn't go through all these decades of learning and progression to create CI/CD processing tools and code gen and all the things that we have today to make the developer lifecycle and implementation CMSs efficient. We didn't create all of that and then just to have it thrown in the bin for being able to type into, some chatbot, this is what I want, generate it for me, and off we go. So I think the biggest challenge is knowing where a good tool has its value. AI 100% does. I'm sure lots of engineers would probably disagree with what I'm saying. But that's where I stand, is just make sure you're using the right tool for the right reasons. And if you don't, that's when you're starting to get problems.
Yeah. I love that, because there needs to be a healthy skepticism about this, right? Otherwise, there's major risk, especially if you're an enterprise company, if you're in regulated industry, or even a consumer brand. The risk around just your reputation and authenticity. I mean, with the amount of AI slop that's out there, I think we all know, if you're on Instagram and you're scrolling, you see something that you want to be nowhere near that account anymore, because you almost feel duped. And I think that there's a major risk with both quality but also consumer trust. And I think you really nailed it on the head there. So I think we do need to have a healthy skepticism around all of the things that AI has the potential to do based on where it is. And I the end of the day, the human brain is so powerful that it needs to be deeply embedded in every single one of these places that we've talked about, from code to campaign. Well, I think I've grilled you guys both enough, so I'm gonna let you back on off the hot seat. And then I do want to ask you for just a few takeaways. We've covered a lot of topics, from authenticity to team building to how the team should operate, to how you should evaluate from code to campaign. So I'd love your kind of key takeaways. Maybe I'll start with you, Donnie. For using AI to optimize from code to campaign, like what would you want our audience to walk away and say, hey, here's the 2 or 3 things that I learned during the session?
Yeah, so here's the number one thing, actually. For me, it's let your channel owners be your channel owners. Let them truly set the strategy and run it. AI is a tool just like another creation tool beneath it, and you should absolutely empower and encourage them. But the channel owner has to be the channel owner, and that's got to be that way, whether it's going to the creative process, the execution process, the strategy process. They have to be the one in charge. You can't hand it off to a machine. And you can't assume that it's going from, like I said before, the chain of person to person is not a strategy. Somebody leading.
Yep. Thank you, Donnie. It's a great one. And that the ownership throughout and the ownership of the function and now how AI plays into each is going to be critical, and what we've seen is successful with a lot of our clients. Danny, how about for you?
I would just have to mirror everything Donnie just said, to be honest with you. The only thing I would add is, if you are a tech person and you're picking up a CMS implementation for the first time, say, or you're very new to the space, listen to the channel owners, listen to the business, be part of that process. Don't be tech about it. Don't look for what's nice and fancy and sexy and everything else. Just take a step back. Listen to what the business is trying to do. Focus on enablement. Do not focus on the tech. The tech will follow, right? But it shouldn't be a limiter to a business.
Yeah, Danny, I love that, because you're thinking about what each person needs first and foremost, right? And that
doesn't work without it, right?
Yep. It has to, and I preach this, but it has to be a team sport, because if anyone is left out from that code to campaign, something's going to drop. If the dev can't deliver it where it needs to be done in a timely fashion, in a way that's impactful, and if the creative and content teams can't make edits, it's not going to lead to that end result that Donnie and you both kind of very helpful way beat that drum earlier. I think that's it for today. Donnie and Danny, I really appreciate both of you being on. To our audience, if you have any questions, you can connect with both of them on LinkedIn. They're both domain experts in their field, from code to campaign. Thanks for joining this session, and we'll see you around at the rest of dotConnect. Thanks, everyone.